This is the comparison between the amino acid tyrosine, the element of thulium, and the day of Toj, the 19th day. This is a fairly easy one to do because the functions are extremely similar, and the examination is by function primarily, but also the orders. Now, one of the arguments about the order of the amino acids is, well, Dave, that doesn't have anything to do with that because that's just the alphabetical order. But my argument back to that is that biology is full of self-ordering systems, and to regard ourselves as existing outside the possibility of self-ordering is not logical. There's when I look at the people and the examples and all this stuff, that's like 99.9% of the examples are self-ordering because nobody knows the days. They didn't plan to do this. It just happens. So the fact that you may not know your function doesn't mean that you don't have one. And the fact that you may not be aware of self-ordering systems doesn't mean they don't exist. So now as to the causation, that's definitely outside my field. I would say that's not my department. I would say physics or maybe even chronobiology should probably have a stab at it. I think they would come up with the same thing, that it's that the energies, because we call these energies that form these different things, the same energy. The theory here is that the same energy forms thulium, forms tyrosine, and Toj is the indicator, the invisible indicator that is these descriptors, and this knowledge was formed by thousands of years of observations, most likely involving the same types of people in our societies that are working on today's biggest research projects, like xenobots and things of this nature. It was probably the same type of people, the scientists, because it is a science. And especially, the I Ching is very minimalist, but that shape of those lines does have meaning, and they do correlate with some of the shapes that arise during the examination of these times. The days change every 24 hours, and they repeat in a 20-day cycle. This much is very clear. This is not up for dispute. If you don't know it, well, there's always time to learn, I guess, but it doesn't mean they don't exist. They definitely do. It's definitely science. It's not a religion. This is science. You could call it a cosmology if your culture uses that a certain way. I'm not sure that the Chinese are pretty dry. The I Ching is really dry, and it's very minimalist, but their descriptors are very thorough and a little harder to interpret because it's a different culture. You're definitely going to have a lot better time interpreting the English translation of the descriptors of the I Ching if you have at least some sense of how the Chinese culture or the Asian culture interprets these things. But there's no question that multiple cultures across the earth have the 20 days. Some are more vocal about it than others. Luckily, the Maya were very vocal. They want people to learn these. They want to teach them. They're very generous in their dispensation of knowledge. They they don't see any reason to hide it, at least at this time. I think previously they definitely did, because it was under assault. So, but the general commonality between these three things is the advance before authority for examination, the the examination of whatever it is that's being presented. That's that's the commonality. So that's the function it provides in our society. I'll show that as we go along. These are two different representations. One is a combined calendar showing the days on the perimeter and the 36 decans of the solar year on the next concentric set on the interior in their proper alignment with the beginning between Z and Bots. Now, Bots would be the first day. Toj is the number 19th day. The elements are in the image on the left. I'm not showing the whole thing. I have that link in a descriptor to Time School, and you can view the entire image. That contains the 84 primordial elements of the periodic table in order, in alignment, and correlated with the times of the various cycles. Now, the body part for Toj, every day lists a body part, and I'm always very interested in that. That piqued my interest in checking into biology because when you see a body part listed, it's like, wow, I wonder if is that a symbolic reference or is it actually something that could be biologically noticeable? Well, it definitely is. As the examples come forth and the functions in our society become clear for the people born on this day, they definitely exhibit these qualities. And the ear uses the hairs in the cochlea are very closely related to tyrosine. And the different the central nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. So these things are important to keep in mind as we go along. This is more, in these images, this is more about tyrosine and Toj than it is the thulium. But we'll get to thulium. So just two examples of people born on the day, very prominent examples that just stick right out. Like I say, this one's pretty easy. Roger Payne was this guy who studied echolocation in whales and bats, and he wrote a book, but he was very well known for doing this, and it gave us a lot of new information about how sound is used to locate objects in space. And the theory of sound is still required reading in a lot of schools, depending on your chosen field of study. And that was written by John Strutt, who was born on 13 Toj. So those are a couple of examples. The one I didn't get a birthday for, it was a very interesting example. I love this guy. He's the kind of guy that I look at when you see somebody like him in our society. He fulfills an amazing function. But he's Daniel Kish is blind, and he teaches echolocation using clicks of his mouth and a stick or other things. And he's able to navigate airports and everything else by himself. Very independent, and the fact that he's teaching other people to do that is certainly very nice advancement in our species. A lot of performers are on Toj, and and the general essence of ceremony or communication in a lot of things. It's all about wanting to be heard and wanting to be listened to. So naturally, a lot of performers and other people are born on Toj. Lennon, Madonna, Rihanna, and Mandela, all born on Toj. Thulium mixed with iodide makes metal halide lighting ideal for auditoriums and stages. So that's just one function of thulium that we found so far. And I thought that fit very, very well because this is a direct relation to the essence of Toj and examination and the listening. It just has everything packed in there beautifully. And being under the lights, they call it. So when you get to Toj in the 20-day cycle, this is the day that you want to be under the lights. You want to present yourself. You want to be examined. It's the essence of ceremony, is to step into the light, the limelight, they call it. I didn't check into anything for that, but I'll bet you there's something to it. Now, the other thing about tyrosine that is absolutely amazing in the correlation with the amino acids jumps right out at me. This was before I actually started with the notion. It was one of the things that prompted me to say, hey, wait a minute, that's pretty incredible. That's 2 out of 20 in both systems that match precisely, because phenylalanine is the precursor for tyrosine. And Toj, in the 20 days, Toj is related to Cot. Now, there's only 2 other days where that was mentioned in the descriptors that I have, and that was Bots and Kawak. The connection between Bots and Kawak is quite more readily apparent. They're the same element. They have a lot of similarities. Whereas this knowledge of tyrosine and phenylalanine is absolutely advancing the knowledge of the depth of the relationship between Cot and Toj in the interdisciplinary study. So Cot is the energy from the sacred fire. Toj is the sacred fire. So that's pretty interesting. It's almost, I wouldn't call it the reverse, because people may think, well, there's one that comes before the other. Phenylalanine comes before tyrosine, so here it kind of seems like Toj comes before Cot, but it's not. Cot is the 14th day, Toj is the 19th day, so Toj always follows Cot, and Cot is the energy from it. Toj is the sacred fire. So a lot of times when you're keeping the cycles, there's something you have, it's a process. So when you get to this stage of the process, this is the examination point before the final day of the 20. Then it picks up and starts something else all over again, comes around, and a lot of times we see the product, the combined product of manifestation coming out in Cot. So that's not surprising to me at all. So that's that. And so the example of Fawny Willis, so she's about to take the stage, isn't she? If she proceeds with her thing, and how does the one Toj correlate to her? I say she's a very good example. I'm anticipating that she's the element of Toj that stacks rocks. There's ancient writing about this day where it talks about the stacking of rocks, or the piling of rocks. And it is a more and more you see these piles of rocks around, and when you look at them, you immediately feel the sensation of somebody has performed this they've left this pile of rocks as a ceremonial gesture. And it's very, very old. Even the monkeys do this, we've learned. The antipodal decan to Toj, which is the direct correlation, carves into stone. So it's the third decan of Libra. This is Thoth or monkey decan. This is the one that carves the truth into stone after it comes out of the scales and enforces the scales. So the product of the scales is determining truth. Well, in the days, this is the job of Toj. So these two things stand out, and another reason why it's fairly easy when you understand the antipodal effect is this is very, very, very much a suitable position for her, and I contend that if the job falls to her and she takes the stage, she will stack the rocks and she will put the white one on the top, and it will be her rock that is last. So in the old understanding of solving an argument, you have a point to make, you stack a rock. The other person has a point, they stack a rock, and you go back and forth until the last rock is on the top and the agreement is formed, or the issue is resolved, and the truth is on the top of the pile. And that's the symbology and also the very real process of it. So we can look at the court case as the stacking of rocks, and she's very well suited for this. So her decan is actually dolphin, the very next decan after monkey. So she's what we call an avatar, somebody who has an alignment in time and has performed their function to a very high level, and such that they rise to a very prominent position in whatever field. And so, yeah, I very much anticipate that we'll see where she goes with it, but that's the up-to-date, moving, active example that we can watch and see. And the orange lettering in the center of the image. This is basically what it is when we have a ceremony, particularly with the invisible or just with the universal consciousness. We do this. We have something to share. We have something to say, and we want to be heard. Same with performance. So the science of ceremony, the tyrosine and the catecholamines and the fight or flight instinct or sensation was very interesting to look at. Not surprising, but very interesting. I was actually surprised at how accurate it was. I thought, wow, look at this. I mean, you can't make this up. It's in the central nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. So one of the lessons from many elders that I've talked to is that when you do ceremony, the success or failure of it is nearly always dependent on the purity of your heart. And the sympathetic nature of your heart is attractive to other life. So in other words, I've noticed that people that have these very quiet, gentle, strong personalities, and they have really pure sympathetic hearts, animals just go up to them. Animals are attracted to people that do this. So it's not unusual to find these types of people in the spiritual arts. And certainly in the conducting of ceremonies and the study of these things. So yeah, the catecholamines, very, very big relationship between tyrosine and TOJ. That is a absolute match, and it doesn't. I didn't see any other amino acid talking about that as much, so I can't move it around. Thulium prevents counterfeiting. So, so so the three of them, right? TOJ, tyrosine, thulium, they get to the heart truth of the matter, don't they? And they shine a light on it. And I thought, wow, look at this. Thulium is used in the euro to prevent counterfeiting. So you shine a light on them. It's a special light, but a light nonetheless. You shine a light on it to make sure it's true. And in industrial radiography inspection, they use thulium as well to peer inside different components of machinery or objects to inspect inaccessible things. So this is actually we have a transportable, basically, like very similar to an x-ray in a hospital, but this thing, you can just take it around and put it on a machine and turn the little machine on, and you can look inside that machine and you can see what's going on. I would say that's extremely useful just in and of itself, but the fact that it actually peers inside to the heart of the machine or the difficult to access parts of the machine, that is extremely compelling. So that's thulium. So in the overall examination, it's very simple, and it shows very clearly in society and in science and in the earth and all the things that thulium is the material application of this energy. Tyrosine is the biological application of this energy, and TOJ is the spiritual application of this energy. The examination, the verification of the condition. And the I Ching hexagram for this is number 19. The days and the hexagrams are the days, the 1 through 20 of the I Ching hexagrams in the leg translation. That's the one I use. Those are the days. So the hexagrams 21 through 56 are the 36 decans of the solar year. And those are matchable quite easily by comparing them to the Hindu system and actually a few other systems as well. So they all compare pretty well. We're getting into those, but the day of TOJ is the hexagram of Lin, and even the shape, it is like the pathway going straight up with a few, you could even look at that shape and say, wow, it's like a couple of steps leading up to a opening. And well, that's a lot of times, that's exactly how we build a stage, isn't it? And that's where you stand. And it's like the day of E, the hexagram number 2. It's like, wow, look at that. It's just, that's the only one that has a path all the way through it, and that's E. So the shapes do correspond, depending on the shapes do correspond with the hexagrams. It's just they're, because they're just 6 lines and you're using spaces and solid bars, it does minimize the overall visual aspect of the shape, but it corresponds nonetheless. So, yeah, it's an easy one. There's the halide lighting on the stage. There's the wedding ceremony. There's the listening. Now, I think in general, when we're going around the 20 days and we get to this part, it is, people like to say, oh, they're, burning gifts for their spirits or their gods or what. I think that's a perception issue that has been injected by competitive interests, let's say. I don't think that a lot of people that perform these types of fire ceremonies, I don't think that's the way they're thinking about it. They most often, what my understanding is, and it may not be full, I'm just, very, very lightly involved in any of that, but I have seen it, and I talked, and I tried to ask as many questions as I could. I tried to get a sensation for what's going on. What is the purpose? It's been an area that I've been very curious about, because it's like, this isn't just one or two people. This isn't just one culture or two. This is a species-wide phenomena where we seek to connect with the universal consciousness. And a lot of times with ceremony, it's payment for the fire. Well, what is the payment for the fire? Everything in symbiosis requires exchange. So for humans, because we're not predator, well, we are predator, we're not prey, so we don't pay too often that way. Like for instance, if you're the water buffalo, nobody's going to question the water buffalo's contribution to the biological system, right? So, but for humans, we do take a lot, don't we? And if we examine ourselves properly and truthfully, there's a recognition that, hey, we kind of take a lot of stuff, and we're not connected like bees to flowers. In a way we are, but we're not. Our bodies aren't generally used for food, although there are some people on the planet that throw the bodies to the vultures as this way of completing the cycle. Most of the time we bury our bodies. So our bodies aren't really used in the exchange. We have a tendency to want to withhold that. Now, it may end up that it's worm food, and you can say, well, the worms get something out of it, but there still is this sense of lack of connection with humans, and we're always, and even the primates, like I've said, the chimpanzees do this. They'll pile rocks under a tree, and that's a ceremony, and it's a certain tree. So there's a lot to that as well. So I'm not going to get into all that. All I'm saying is that I think the general understanding for knowledgeable and wise ceremonial practices, I think the general essence of it is that symbiosis requires exchange and communication. The question of wanting to be listened to requires exchange. Now, surely lots of people can get into all kinds of wild ideas of how to go about that. I think it's very okay and very benign and proper when we offer things like sugar, candles, these kinds of things. I don't know about getting crazy with the candles, but certainly there's a lot of the cultures that establish these things. They find out what works and they repeat that, and that's pretty much what I see the chimpanzees doing. So I don't find it to be outside our biological and spiritual wheelhouse. I think it's very much a part of that. I think the future holds better clarity regarding these types of things. I think we're going to get to the bottom of the science of it. And examining tyrosine is really, speaking personally, the examination of tyrosine, seeing these correlations and seeing this connection, that has helped me a lot to understand it. So that's what I got for tyrosine and Tosh and Thulium. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.